This is waste generated by sector. As the UK has moved slowly away from primary manufacture into more of a service industry, so the various sectors are changing all the time. And as a response of that, there's a different type of waste material. If you haven't got heavy manufacturing, then you haven't got a lot of construction material. You've got more lighter packaging material. Household waste. Household waste is fundamentally organic of its nature. Nearly about 40% of what we produce is organic. Therefore, it lends itself to anaerobic digestion and composting. And the red, green, and purple are paper, plastics, glass. The dry recyclables, which are collected from the household and add to our recycling percentage, which I'll get to in a moment. And this is where we are at the present time. Total waste arising is about 22 million tonnes. About half of that is residual waste, and the remaining half is recycled, dry recycling and composting. And so we're about 40 to 48% across the UK, depending where you are. Again, I'll get to that a bit later. And that's changing all the time. But as you can see, in the one on the far left end, that's disposal to landfill, changing dramatically over year by year. And recycling is somewhat stagnated. What has increased is the amount going to incineration. This is over a 10-year period, and you'll see that the biggest change is in the strange colour in the middle, which is organic material which is composted. Previously it had gone to landfill. Now, I'll show you this one because I think it's just a fantastic spider's web. I'm not a big fan of comparative statistics across Europe because we all define MSW differently and we all define recycling differently. But when it shows the UK in a good light, I'm all in favour of comparative statistics. And you'll see here, the red line is 2010 and the green line is 2001. So it's the change over a 9 or 10 year period. And you'll see this is recycling rate in the UK has changed dramatically over the period. To the extent that, and I'll get to it again a bit later, we have gone to Cyprus and other countries who aren't doing quite so well to explain to them how we've made that 20% difference in some cases over a very short period. And this just shows you how we were, 6 years ago, 53% landfill, and this is us now. So 10% less landfill, 6% more composted, and interestingly 15% is now incinerated, whereas previously it was a lot less than that. So more recycling, more incineration, less landfill, which is all good stuff. And this is across Europe. So you'll see that green is recycled, and that's increased over the period. Incineration's increased, and the amount going to landfill has gone down. The disappointing line is the blue line at the top. That's waste arising. Now, if we are truly preventing waste like we should do, that line should be coming down. But we're still generating the same type of waste, same amount of waste as we have done over many years, which is not a good indicator. And this again just shows the similar sort of trend. Waste arising is a change from landfill to recycling, and a reduced landfill capacity. The landfill directive in Europe means we've got to divert biodegradable municipal material away from landfill. That's the primary driver in Europe. And again, another little spider's web. This is landfilling rates, and you'll see again, Ireland, UK, Poland dramatically reduced the amount that we've landfilled over the period. You'll see also that some have increased the amount they've landfilled over the period, which is it baffles me how Bulgaria can go from 70-something% up to nearly 100%. But anyway, what we need to do is get other countries performing like those on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock. That's the ambition. But it'll take us a little time. What we've got to do is learn from what the other countries have done. Is it legislation? Is it financial drivers? But there's a fundamental swing we have to have across Europe to change that earlier graph that I showed you. Now I'll show you this, not to patronise you in any way. This is the United Kingdom. It's made up of, well, the blue is Republic of Ireland, a national member of the EU. But Scotland, England, Wales and Northern Ireland have devolved responsibility for waste, so they set their own policies, strategies, targets, and have their own legislation. And they each have different ambition. So you'll see, and we're on record as an organisation saying that the ambition from England is a little bit disappointing, that we're only going for the statutory requirement from Europe, whereas Scotland are going for 70%, Wales going for 70%, and Northern Ireland, they are now going to go for 70% as well. And how does this kind of translate itself? If you have that ambition from government, it means Wales have that ambition, and their targets have increased dramatically, as you'll see here. The rest of us are kind of bumbling along. The other factor to bear in mind is the fact that Wales spend a lot more money on collecting waste. They have separation for food waste, but also they are spending more on collecting separate recyclables, putting pressure back onto commerce and local authorities to collect that material. How we split up? Well, there's a good and bad here in that we have 5 government departments with at least some responsibility for waste and resources. The parent body is DEFRA, Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, policy and legislation from them, but BIS also look at packaging waste, producer responsibility, there's climate change, local government involved with DCLG, and of course the Treasury and taxation. So everybody has a bite at this, which is, if they're all talking to each other, I perhaps shouldn't say that, one of my UKTI slide, if they're all talking to each other and we had policies which transcended government departments, it would be smashing, but it's not quite like that. Talk to me later about that one. Local government responsibilities. When you break down to next tier, now I've oversimplified these because there are many different arrangements between local authorities, but fundamentally we have collection authorities, which can be as small as 20,000 people or 1 million people. Their responsibility for collecting municipal waste. There are about 400 of these across the UK, and they have multiple responsibilities, and it has to be a tendered out service. So it's about 50% have gone for a private sector, and about 50% are in the public sector. Disposal authorities are county boundaries, and generally they are 6 or 7 collection authorities altogether. This is entirely privatised. There's the responsibility for collecting the waste and treating it, but it's in the hands of the private sector. And some of our money comes from council tax. Not all of it comes from direct from government. We don't have a pay-as-you-throw system, much to the disappointment, I should say, of our organisation. If we had a pay-as-you-throw system, there's a lot more direct relationship from the amount you put in your dustbin to the amount you're paying. At the moment, you just pay a flat council tax. The regulators, we have independent regulators across all of the UK countries, and these are some of their responsibilities in the waste and resource sector. Now, that's only part of what they do. It's a very small part of what they do. They are also responsible for, to some extent, for forestry, inland waterways, biodiversity and that sort of thing. So we only got a slice of the regulator. We'd like a little bit more. We all work in the EU, and I think beyond that, to the waste hierarchy. Fundamentally, we should be preventing our waste and then disposing of it to landfill or whatever. We'd like that triangle to be more circular. Now, what are the drivers? I mentioned earlier the driver is legislation from Europe to divert waste away from landfill, and we have recycling targets. But financial instruments have proven to be very, very successful. So this is landfill tax. Started off at a very low level, as you see over here, by a Conservative government, and it trundled along as a very low incremental annual increase up to about 2005, about 10 years ago. And you'll see it had very little difference on the amount going to landfill, which is the blue line at the top. Then it's hiked up, £2.50 a tonne every year. And then hiked up again, the sharp rise, £8 a tonne. When you make that hike, the amount going to landfill comes down dramatically. And at £8 a tonne, we're now at a flat rate of £82 a tonne, and it'll only go up on inflation every year. But it has made a dramatic effect on the amount of waste going to landfill. A politician would tell you, that every time they introduced a new policy or strategy, it's had an effect. But I think that's just a politician would tell you that. So how are they doing it? Well, they're doing it by investing to some extent in organisations like WRAP, the Waste and Resource Action Programme, who are providing advice and guidance to local authorities and businesses on how they can better prevent the waste, or don't generate the waste, recycle the waste. And so they work with bigger retailers on what's called a quartile commitment on packaging, and also they work a lot on food waste. So love, food, hate waste, let's get it right, is a very pronounced program which WRAP are now selling across the world as a behaviour change program. So don't produce the amount of waste. At the moment in the UK, it's about £400 per family per year, food waste we're throwing away. So don't just throw it away and then we can get the compost, we can compost it or get the anaerobic digested. Don't produce it in the first place. That's what they're saying. Quite right too. So a quick flick through technologies, which I think are fairly straightforward. We have done, many years, done a lot of landfilling. It's containment landfilling, and a lot of this technology is established in many places. We'll talk later about some of the appropriate technologies we sell overseas. It's no good moving from an open dump to a containment landfill site. The jump is just too much. But in European countries, this is the way we should be going. And if these are contained sites, you can draw off the landfill gas, and it's which would be a major contributor to climate change. But we can utilise that landfill gas, put it back into the grid, or use the gas cleaned up. Soil treatment facilities, there's a lot more in situ treatment facilities. When I used to operate a landfill site, contaminated land was just dug up and disposed off to landfill site. Now we in situ treat these, and the best example is the Olympics. None of the contaminated, that was heavily contaminated land in East London. It's all treated in situ and replaced. So it can be done, and it's an industrial country with industrial heritage. It's an important feature for us. The construction waste, we're well over 70% construction recycling in this country. Segregated, reprocessed, often on site. It's heavy material. It's expensive to get rid of in a landfill site, but you can reprocess it on site and reuse it if it meets standards. And I've personally done a lot of work on standards and protocols for secondary aggregates, construction materials, which can go back into construction materials, concrete. Road planings are a good example. Rather than take the road planings off and use them as a site road and a landfill, they're now reprocessed and they go back onto the road. Composting, we've always had established composting either external windrows or internally, and anaerobic digestion is really taken off. With all the food waste collections, particularly in Scotland and Wales, this material's got to go somewhere, it goes to the AD plant, we can take off the gas and use the gas, and then the material which is generated, government have also funded projects to get anaerobic digestion off the ground. But the material that's generated has to go back to the soil, or should go back to the soil, but it must meet the standard. You can't just put this potentially contaminated material back to the land without it meeting the standard. And WRAP, again, have worked hard on developing these standards. Incineration, I mentioned earlier that we've done a lot more thermal treatment in this country, and these plants, so we're now up to about 15% of our MSW, which is treated in thermal treatment plants. That's Hampshire, I think, and another one, Riverside, where we're generating electricity, which is going back into the grid. So what are the opportunities? Well, we presently employ somewhere between 150 and I think it says 130 up here. It depends where you put the boundaries for the waste and resources sector, but it's a big number. But it could increase dramatically if we go to a circular economy and recycle rather than landfill or thermally treat. There are potentially more people that can be employed, and also there's the benefit of all those resources. And the recycling sector is at about 11 billion. It could jump by 3 billion if we truly recapture all those resources. So what are the overseas opportunities? Well, we do a lot of work on training. We've developed in-house or purpose-built training as far as St Helena, which is an island out in the middle of the Atlantic. We've done work in the Lebanon as well, and we can develop training programs which are linked to legislation or they are operational. We have a landfill gas program which is immediately transferable to any sort of economy. And we are spreading our wings beyond just the waste and resource sector. We also do work with the allied oil and gas sector, and we've done work in the States, Singapore, and there's a lot of opportunity there because there are a lot of similarities in some of the work we do. A lot of UK consultants are getting work beyond European boundaries, looking at strategic development policies. We've even got somebody working on legislation for e-waste in Central and West Africa. So again, strategic development in Saudi Arabia is some work we're doing. And landfill technologies, I mentioned earlier, we're working with the Philippines and South American countries, moving from open dump sites with pickers on site through a transition of at least closed dump sites to early landfill. Eventually they'll get to containment landfill, but let's not jump too quickly, too fast. So that's sort of appropriate technology we're working on also. In manufacturing, just look around. Bin manufacturers and vehicle manufacturers, a lot of those are UK and they're sold overseas. And we work with DEFRA. We have a program whereby we develop a system of bursaries for MSCs, which is linked to government policy development and our policy development. So the students do work which is linked to our future program on policies. Partnership programs, we work very closely with a number of organisations on European and European funded programs. So we worked on the Leonardo program on health and safety, on operations, collection operations. We worked with the Environment Agency on Equal, which is standards for waste or non-waste materials. And we worked on an Acumen program, which was about landfill gas utilisation for closed landfill sites across Europe. Conferences and workshops, we do an awful lot of conferences, and I think there's a huge opportunity because everyone wants to know what we're doing in the UK, particularly, as I mentioned earlier, how we've jumped from 60 or 70% landfill down to 40 and the other way around for recycling. How have we done it over a short period of time, and how we can transfer that information and knowledge to other countries. And we do a number of awards. There'll be an award on our stand tomorrow, I think. We have an overseas student sponsored, and he's come in from the UAE, and we give him a bursary to attend meetings like this and learn from members. We do, this is the final slide, and I'll go to questions, a number of outgoing trade missions to a variety of countries, and nearly every week we have requests for incoming trade missions talk to us about this sort of presentation, which I've stolen from one of my others. No, I didn't. I wrote it personally. And they come in, we show them facilities, we give them the opportunity to talk to regulators and other operators so they get a feel for the industry and what they can pick up from that. And we provide technical advice. We have our embassies will contact us if they've got contracts coming up or they've been asked about providing further advice. And at the moment we are trying to finalise an industry brochure which is selling the UK and the UK waste and resources sector out to embassies and consulates abroad.